Cool.
How's it going, guys? It's Devin here with Make Anything, and I'm feeling a bit under the weather today, but that's not going to stop me from making a video for you guys because Easter's coming up, and I thought I had a pretty cool idea for a little Easter-related project. I have some fond memories of decorating Easter eggs with my family when I was a little kid, and I figured maybe it's time for a little update. Maybe there's some new ways to decorate your Easter eggs. So today we're going to use the 3Dsimo 3D pen and do some 3D pen Easter egg decoration. Yeah, I thought it would be kind of interesting. Do some experimentation, see what we can come up with. I think it could be kind of cool. So let's go ahead and do that. Of course, the first thing we've got to do is prepare the eggs. That's why we're in the kitchen. You could decorate hard-boiled eggs, but instead of that, we're going to hollow out some eggs so that we're left with just the shell. Maybe it's safe to eat eggs that have been 3D pen drawn on. Maybe it's not. I'd rather just decorate the egg and we'll make some scrambled eggs instead.
Preparing the eggs is super easy. All you need is a needle, a toothpick, or some way to poke a hole through the very top and bottom of the eggs. I had to poke a few holes to make a hole that's large enough so that the yolk will be able to come out without cracking the egg. Once you've done that, all you've got to do is blow through one end and all the contents of the eggs should come out from the other side. Then I just rinsed it out in the sink and blew a bit more water through just to make sure it was all clean on the inside, and I laid it out on a paper towel to dry for a couple minutes. My second egg ended up cracking just because the hole wasn't large enough and the pressure of the air ended up breaking it open. So you really do want to make sure that the hole is large enough. Something like 4 or 5 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch, should do the job. So we've got our hollow shells, and we don't want the rest of the eggs to go to waste, so make yourselves an omelet or some scrambled eggs like me. Alright, so now that I'm well nourished, we can go ahead and start experimenting with these eggs. I'm going to start out by working on that cracked egg just as a test, and I'm going to see if I can follow along those cracks to maybe hold the egg together. It seemed to be working okay, but I found that as the plastic was shrinking, it kind of just popped off of the egg. I experimented with both ABS and PLA plastics, and neither of them really stuck as well as I was hoping. So I decided to try my hairspray trick, just covering the egg with a little bit of hairspray. That should help things stick once it's dry. But even with that, it was still pretty hard to get adhesion. So I figured the best thing to do is to connect the top and bottom sides of the eggs with a single 3D pen drawing as soon as possible as a way of holding everything together. From there, I just started subdividing the length of the egg with more vertical lines to create these kind of panels that I could fill in with my design. So here I did a kind of cross-hatching technique with these diagonal lines filling in each panel and then alternating the direction of the lines as I went around the egg. You just want to make sure you've got an even number of sections, that way the diagonals don't end up going in the same direction for those last two that you fill in. From there, I went ahead and added a little bit of extra design on the end caps of the egg. Just a similar deal of creating all these different sections and splitting them up. So at that point, I figured I was done with the white, and actually I think I could have stopped here. It looks really nice and clean with just the white plastic, but I decided to experiment a little bit and add some additional colors, starting with this cool metallic bronze filament. I'm going to use that to just fill in a few of the sections on the cross-hatching. I'll just fill in something like 2 or 3 of the sections on each of these vertical panels, trying to make it look kind of randomized, but it is also intentional at the same time, where I'm not having them line up perfectly and, just trying to make it look interesting. Then I used some blue ABS to add a little bit of accent color to the rest of the design. It's just a color combination I like, but of course you're free to do whatever you like. So here's how it turned out, and I think it's pretty cool. The cross-hatching kind of reminds me of bird feathers. Alright, so moving on to the next egg, I decided I wanted to do something a little more crazy. So I'm going to start with this blue luminous PLA, which is a glow-in-the-dark plastic. And also, to make things stick to the egg a little better, I decided to fill in the little holes on the top and bottom to create kind of end caps or plugs that will help the plastic stick onto the egg. And that worked pretty well. So I did that on both ends and then started drawing these circles to connect the top and bottom as soon as possible, just so things stay in place. Then I went around the rest of the egg and continued filling in with this circle pattern. So I think that's going to look really cool glowing in the dark, but I also wanted to add some fluorescent colors to glow under a UV light. So I switched to this fluorescent yellow PLA, which is really bright. Even under daylight, it still glows. It's got a kind of radioactive feel. So I'm just going to selectively fill in some of the circles with this, and then I'm going to just continue switching out with all kinds of different colors. So here I used some black, and then I switched back to another bright color like orange. Some circles I'll just fill in, others I'll have concentric rings of different colors, or even just do little patterns inside of them, just so I have a really crazy psychedelic egg. In design, a lot of people like to say less is more, but for this particular design, I was definitely going for the more is more technique, and that turned out pretty crazy. But the magic happens when you put it under a UV light. As you can see, all those different bright colors really start to glow under a black light like this. And at the same time, the UV light is charging the glow-in-the-dark filament, so when I turn the light off, you only see these glowing sections. I imagine if there are some aliens celebrating Easter on Saturn, this is what their eggs might look like. So that's the crazy end of the spectrum. And next, I decided to do something that looks maybe a little more traditional, using orange and yellow and green and some more typical Easter colors. So once again, I used that technique of plugging the top and bottom holes to have things hold onto the egg, and that works pretty well. But it was still a little bit of a hit and miss to make things stick, but with some practice, I was able to get the lines to stay down pretty well. So I'll go around the egg and just try to create these really flowy, organic lines, just because it's the style I like. Then I'm going to swap colors and start filling in those gaps, and just keep doing that over and over again with different colors, until I'm happy with how much coverage and color I have on the egg. So I'll add some green and I'll finish it off with some white filament, just to make it nice and bright. And there we go. It's still pretty crazy, but more reminiscent of Easter, I think. For my last egg, I wanted to try using the pyrography tool that the 3Dsimo has and see if I could burn some designs onto the shell, but even at the hottest temperature, that wasn't really working. So I switched back to the 3D pen and decided to do another pretty minimal design using only black filament. So I decided to create some little vines with leaves alternating between the left and right side of each of these wavy lines. And I tried to place the leaves and lines in a way that it covers the egg pretty consistently. And I think that came out really nice and elegant as well. So now we just need a way to display these eggs. And I decided to create a little loop of filament so that we can use these as kind of Easter ornaments. So I'll just create that little loop and then use some regular sewing thread, or really whatever string you have lying around, to tie a closed circle of string, and then you can hang that wherever you like.
Well, there you have it. 3D pen Easter egg decorating. It is, in fact, possible. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the plastic to stick to the eggs as well as I was hoping it would, but by designing around the entire egg, I was able to have the parts stick together and stay in place. So that does kind of dictate what kind of designs you'll be making with this technique. But as you can see, there's still a lot of variety that you can come up with. Some things more traditional, some things pretty crazy. It's always fun combining the 3D pen with objects that aren't necessarily plastic, and it can have some really interesting results, as you saw today. If you guys have any ideas of other things I can draw on with the 3D pen, please leave it in the comments and maybe it'll show up in a future video. By the way, you may have noticed that this video was sponsored by 3Dsimo, and first of all, I've just got to thank them for that, as well as for including me in their latest book. It's called Let Your Imagination Run Wild, Expanding Horizons with 3Dsimo, and it's a book basically filled with projects that you can do with your 3Dsimo or any other 3D pen, really. As you can see, it's a pretty darn thick book because it's filled with 40 projects from 15 different artists, including myself, and I've got to say all the projects in here are pretty cool. It's got really nice full-page clean images. Obviously, you guys enjoy getting inspired by 3D pen projects because you're watching this video, and I gotta say this book is filled with a lot of other really great ideas. The book includes projects for all the different functions that the 3Dsimo Mini can do, from 3D pen, leather burning, foam cutting, soldering, and so on. But it's really mostly 3D pen projects, so whether you have the 3Dsimo Mini or some different kind of 3D pen, I would definitely take a look at this, and maybe it's something you guys would like to have. They've also got a pretty cool promo video, so I'm gonna go ahead and play that for you guys now. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for staying tuned. I'm Devin. This is Make Anything. Happy Easter, and don't forget to stay inspired. Woo!